My beloved soul, before we begin this journey of words, take a deep breath. You are here because you are searching, because your spirit is thirsty, because your heart longs for something more than the fleeting joys this world offers. God has placed a message deep within my heart to share with you. Your happiness should not depend on these things. The world has tried to convince you that happiness is something external. They have told you that joy comes from possessions, from relationships, from recognition, from money, from approval, from status. But God whispers something far different. He reminds us that true happiness is not something you can purchase, not something that can be taken away, and not something that crumbles when circumstances shift. When your soul is anchored in God, storms may come, but you will not drown. Winds may blow, but you will not break. Fires may rage, but you will not be consumed. Why? Because your happiness will not depend on these temporary things. Let us walk together, slowly and carefully, through the illusions the world has built. Each one of these illusions has promised happiness, but has left countless hearts empty. God's message today is to unmask them one by one, so that your soul may rest in peace, freedom, and eternal joy. One, happiness should not depend on money. Money is a tool, not a master. It can buy comfort, yes. It can provide convenience, yes. But it cannot buy peace of mind. It cannot heal a broken soul. Cannot create love that is pure and lasting. So many people are enslaved to the idea that happiness comes when their bank account grows. They spend sleepless nights chasing numbers, trading their health, their family, their very souls, just to feel secure. But what happens when markets crash? When jobs end? When opportunities dry up? If happiness was tied to money, then it would collapse with every economic storm. God says, do not let your joy be chained to numbers. Let your joy be chained to me. When you depend on money for happiness, you will always feel poor, no matter how much you have. But when you depend on God for joy, you will always feel rich. Even in moments of lack too. Happiness should not depend on other people's approval. Many souls live in prisons without walls. Do you know why? It's because their happiness depends on what others think of them. One compliment lifts them up, but one criticism destroys them. One like on social media brings a smile, but one rejection brings a storm of insecurity. God never designed you to be enslaved to the opinions of men. You were created in His image, not in the reflection of others' approval. If your happiness depends on being applauded, you will be broken the moment people turn away. But if your happiness depends on God, no rejection can silence your worth. Listen carefully, you cannot please everyone, but you can always please God. And when you live to please Him, you live in freedom. 3. Happiness should not depend on possessions. The new car will rust. The big house will one day need repair. The latest phone will soon be outdated. If your joy is attached to possessions, your joy will always expire. How many people have everything money can buy, but cannot sleep at night?
How many souls
Sit in luxurious mansions, but live with empty hearts. Possessions can decorate your life, but they cannot satisfy your soul. God says, do not treasure the things that fade, treasure the things that last forever. True joy comes when you realize that your soul is more valuable than gold, your peace more precious than diamonds, your love more eternal than silver. For happiness should not depend on romantic relationships. Romantic love is beautiful. Yes, companionship is a blessing. Yes. But your happiness should not be built on the fragile foundation of another human being. People are imperfect, people can change, people can disappoint. If your happiness depends on someone else, you will lose yourself every time they fail you. God says, let me be your first love. When He is your first love, every other relationship flows from strength, not desperation. When He is your anchor, you do not drown when people walk away, my beloved. Pause for a moment. Look within your heart. Ask yourself honestly, where have I tied my happiness? Is it tied to money, to possessions, to approval, to relationships, to achievements? If so, you are building your joy on sand. God is calling you to build your joy on Him, the rock that never moves. Beloved soul, we have already uncovered some of the illusions that deceive the human heart: money, possessions, approval, and relationships. But the world has many more traps. They sparkle like diamonds, but cut like glass. They shine like gold, but rust like iron, and God's message to you is still the same. Your happiness must not depend on these things. Let us go deeper. 5. Happiness should not depend on achievements. Achievements are good. Hard work is honorable. Success brings satisfaction. But here is the danger. When your happiness is tied to achievements, you become a prisoner of your own performance. Think about it. You succeed today, and you feel alive. But what happens when tomorrow brings failure? Suddenly your joy collapses. The medal, the certificate, the award, they look beautiful, but they cannot carry your soul through seasons of loss. God never designed your joy to rest on trophies. He designed it to rest on His eternal love. Achievements can motivate you, yes, but they should never define you. Because even if the world forgets your accomplishments, God never forgets your worth. Point 6. Happiness should not depend on physical beauty. The world worships beauty. Entire industries thrive on convincing people that they are not enough until they look a certain way. Faces are painted, bodies are shaped, filters are applied, all in the desperate attempt to find happiness in appearance. But listen carefully. Beauty fades. Skin changes, hair grays, wrinkles appear, strength weakens. If your happiness depends on how you look, then every mirror becomes a battlefield. Every birthday becomes a reminder of loss. God says, I look at the heart, not the face. I see your soul, not your skin. I value your spirit, not your size. True joy comes when you stop chasing outward beauty and start nurturing inner beauty, the kind of beauty that shines even in old age, kind that grows brighter as years pass. Point 7. Happiness should not depend on popularity. How many followers do you have? How many friends call your name? How many people cheer for you? These questions dominate the world today. Popularity looks sweet, but it is fragile. Crowds can cheer for you today and abandon you tomorrow. Voices that shout your praise in one season may curse your name in the next. If your happiness depends on being liked, you will spend your whole life exhausted, constantly performing, constantly adjusting, constantly pretending. But if your happiness depends on God, you no longer need to be popular. You are free to be authentic. You're free to be yourself. You are free to live with peace. Even if the crowd never notices your name. Point 8. Happiness should not depend on controls. Some people believe they can only be happy if everything is under their control. They need every plan to succeed, every detail to match their expectations, every person to behave according to their desires. But life does not work that way. The more you try to control everything, the more frustrated you become. Happiness tied to control is fragile because life is unpredictable. But happiness tied to surrender is powerful because God never loses control. God says, let go and let me lead. True joy comes when you release the weight of controlling everything and rest in the truth that God's plan is greater than your plan. 9. Happiness should not depend on perfection. Some souls are trapped by the illusion of perfection. They believe they can only be happy when everything is flawless, when their work is perfect, their home is perfect, their relationships are perfect. But perfection is an endless chase that always leaves you exhausted. God never called you to perfection, He called you to progress. He never demanded flawlessness, He asked for faithfulness. If your happiness depends on being perfect, you will always feel broken. But if your happiness depends on God's grace, you will feel whole even in your imperfections. Beloved, pause again. Can you see how the world distracts your heart? First, it told you that happiness depends on money, possessions, approval, and relationships. And it whispered that happiness depends on achievements, beauty, popularity, control, and perfection. But all of these are unstable, temporary, fragile. God is inviting you into a different kind of happiness, one that is eternal, one that cannot be stolen, one that flows like living water from the inside out. We spoke of money, possessions, approval, relationships, achievements, beauty, popularity, control, and perfection. But the list continues, because the human heart is always tempted to lean on weak foundations. God's voice is clear. Your happiness should not depend on these things. Today, let us go even deeper into the illusions that quietly steal joy and keep souls restless. 10. Happiness should not depend on comparing yourself to others. Comparison is a thief that many invite into their hearts without realizing it. You look at another person's life, their success, their beauty, their blessings, and suddenly your joy fades. You forget your own gifts because your eyes are fixed on someone else's. The danger of comparison is that it blinds you to gratitude. It convinces you that happiness is found in what they have instead of what God has given you. But God did not create you to be a copy. He created you to be unique. He says, stop comparing. Your path is yours. Your timing is yours. Your blessings are yours. Joy begins when you celebrate your portion and stop measuring your worth against another soul. 11. Happiness should not depend on the past. Some people cannot be happy today because they are chained to yesterday. Past mistakes haunt them. Past pain wounds them. Past memories trap them. They believe they cannot smile again until they rewrite what has already been written. But hear this truth. The past cannot be changed, but it can be redeemed. God specializes in turning broken stories into testimonies, ashes into beauty, sorrow into joy. If your happiness depends on fixing the past, you will never rest. But if your happiness depends on God's power to heal, then yesterday loses its grip on your today. 12. Happiness should not depend on the future. Others are not trapped in the past. They are imprisoned by the future. They believe they will only be happy when they get the job, when they find the spouse, when they move to a new place, they finally reach the dream. But happiness that depends on when is always postponed, always delayed, always out of reach. God says, rejoice today. I am with you now. Do not wait for tomorrow to be grateful. True joy does not live in the past or the future. It lives in the present, where God meets you with grace. 13. Happiness should not depend on circumstances. Circumstances change like the weather. One moment the sun shines, the next moment storms roll in. If your joy depends on circumstances, then your soul will rise and fall with every season of life. But listen, happiness that depends on God is steady, because God never changes. His love remains the same in sunshine and in storm, in abundance and in scarcity, in laughter and in tears. Paul once said, I have learned to be content in all circumstances. That is the secret. Joy that flows not from what happens around you, but from who lives within you. Point 14. Happiness should not depend on material comfort. Comfort is pleasant, but it can also be deceptive. Many think they cannot be happy without the perfect bed, the perfect clothes, the perfect food, or the perfect lifestyle. But what happens when comfort is taken away? History shows us countless souls who sang in prisons, who worshipped in caves, who rejoiced even in poverty. Why? Because their happiness did not come from comfort, it came from God's presence. God says, do not seek comfort above me, seek me above all, and you will find peace even without comfort. 15. Happiness should not depend on busyness in people. Fill their schedules endlessly because silence scares them. They run from one task to another, one meeting to another, one responsibility to another, believing that happiness comes from constant activity. But busyness is not the same as fulfillment. When you slow down, when you rest in God's presence, when you allow stillness to wash over you, you realize that joy is not in how much you do, but in who you are with. And if you are with stillness, is filled with life, the chains are breaking one by one. We have now unmasked the lies of comparison, the past, the future, circumstances, comfort, and busyness. Slowly, the soul begins to breathe. Slowly, the spirit begins to rise. Beloved soul, we have walked together through many truths. You've uncovered the illusions that the world has sold to you: money, possessions, approval, relationships, achievements, beauty, popularity, control, perfection, comparison, the past, the future, circumstances, comfort, and busyness. But the world still whispers more lies, more distractions, more chains. And God's message continues: your happiness should not depend on these things. Let me be your source of joy. 16. Happiness should not depend on people's promises. Promises are fragile. People can make them, break them, or forget them. If your joy is tied to a promise, you are setting yourself up for disappointment. God says, I am faithful. My promises never fail. Depend on me, and you will never be let down. When your happiness is anchored in God, no human promise can shake you. 17. Happiness should not depend on others' achievements. Some measure joy by the success of others, thinking that another person's rise diminishes their own worth. But this is a trap. Someone else's blessings do not subtract from yours. God says, rejoice in what I do for others, but anchor your joy in me. When you focus on God, the achievements of others become inspiration, it's not envy. 18. Happiness should not depend on entertainment or distractions. Movies, music, social media, and endless distractions can temporarily take your mind off pain, but they cannot fill the emptiness of the soul. People chase thrills and laughter, but true joy is deeper than amusement. God says, let me entertain your heart. Let me satisfy your longing. Let my spirit fill your soul. 19. Happiness should not depend on pleasure alone. Pleasure can feel sweet, but it is fleeting. Food, comfort, romance, and indulgence cannot sustain the soul. If happiness depends on pleasure, it is always temporary, always needing more. But God offers pleasure of the spirit, a joy that grows, contentment that lasts. It's a peace that nothing can steal. 20. Happiness should not depend on yourself alone. Finally, many souls think they must manufacture their own happiness, relying solely on self-discipline, strength, and willpower. But God reminds us, apart from me, you can do nothing. With me, all things are possible. True happiness is not self-made. It is God-given. It is found when you surrender pride, when you let go of control, and when you let God's Spirit dwell within you. The eternal truth, beloved, now hear this, with the deepest part of your heart. Happiness that depends on the world will always fade. Happiness that depends on God will never fade. Anchor your soul in Him. Let your heart rise above money, possessions, approval, relationships, achievements, beauty, popularity, control, perfection, comparison, the past, the future, circumstances, comfort, busyness, promises, others' achievements, entertainment, pleasure, self-reliance. Let your joy be anchored in God. Let His love be your foundation. Let His Spirit flow in you. Let His promises guide you. When you do this, storms cannot shake you, pain cannot break you, loss cannot destroy you, and nothing can take your joy. Heavenly Father, I thank you. I thank you for revealing to us the false foundations of happiness and for showing us that true joy comes only from you. Help us to release every worldly chain. Help us to trust in your eternal love. Teach us to rejoice in your presence, to find our contentment in your Spirit, to walk every day with peace and unshakable joy. Amen, beloved soul. Take this message to heart. Share it. Live it. Every day, remind yourself that happiness is not in things, people, or circumstances. It is in God alone. Your soul was created for this joy, eternal and unshakable, flowing directly from the heart of the Creator.